We're going to show a clip of something that happened to you. We're going to watch it without sound, and I want you to set up what we're about to see. And then we're going to watch it with sound, and you guys will see why.
Yeah, absolutely. So the night of April 30th, those of us inside of Hind's Hall heard that police were mobilizing outside of campus. Columbia had already locked down campus to a level we had never seen before, even throughout the encampments, even during the first hours of Hind's Hall, to the point where not a single student, staff, or faculty member was able to enter. They also shut all press out. They pushed press into buildings. The remaining students who were living in the dorms were locked inside of dorm buildings because their goal was to make sure that no one would witness the violence and brutality that they were about to enact on us inside Hind's Hall. And so we are all bracing for the attack as we hear, I believe it was 8 flash grenades shot over our heads into the building. They're using saws to cut through the barricades. And then the video that you'll see is the moment that they break through and begin to assault students in some of the most horrific violence that's been enacted on students on our campuses since 1968.
And what happened to you?
Yeah, I am closest to one of the doors that they break through first, and I'm thrown onto the stairs, and another student protester actually covers me with their body as they're beating them on top of me and carries me up the stairs away from the police assault.
And when you say you're thrown onto the stairs, it was a police officer who threw you?
Yeah, hit me in the face with their shield and threw me into the stairs.
And that's you, right? You just fell down. Okay, and that's the student we're going to see now covering you, like to protect you. Okay, so let's watch now. And you have your hand around him, right? Like afterwards? Okay, because obviously, because he's helping you, not harming you. So let's watch now how CNN described that scene.
Barricades to reach the protesters who had been holding the building. As one protester appears to advance towards police, a second protester wrestles him to the ground. Police reach a stairwell.
Okay, so the way that they're describing that is you are approaching the police, and then another protester wrestles you to the ground.
Yes, and in typical CNN fashion, nothing close to the truth about it. I'm thrown by the police officer's shield hitting me across the face into the stairs, and another student at risk of their own life because they have to turn their back on the police and are then beaten with batons, covers me with their body, and essentially lifts me up the stairs and places me in another student's lap because I'm disoriented. And then when I come to, the student whose lap I'm placed on gets stomped in the face by a white shirt commander, which led to an eye socket fracture and lasting concussions. Other students had burns from the flash grenades, and I was hospitalized out of the attack, as well as numerous other protesters inside Hind's Hall. And as Brandon mentioned earlier, this was not an event in isolation. The NYPD, under the direction of Eric Adams, under the direction of people like Rebecca Weiner, who is the head of the counterterrorism department of the NYPD, also a professor at Columbia, a professor in my college, the School of International and Public Affairs, who planned the execution of these attacks. They simultaneously attacked us the same night that they attacked the City College CUNY building occupation, the same night that they attacked 3 other encampments in the city. And dozens of not just students, but community members were hospitalized as a result of the police violence. And for what? Because we were protesting a genocide that everyone from the NYPD to these universities, to the Board of Trustees, to Eric Adams is deeply complicit in. So they were just protecting their bottom line at the expense of our lives and the lives of our loved ones in Palestine.
And we're going to show more media coverage of this because I think it's really worth looking at. But let's just take a look at your injuries, which you documented. So we actually have you being dragged away by the police. We have a video of that. So there you are describing what happened to you, right?
Yeah, because even at the time, we knew that there would be There would be lies coming out from the university, from the NYPD, from the mayor's office. As soon as we were put in jail, we knew, for those of us that were around during the George Floyd uprisings of 2020 in New York City, we know how they always try to spin us as the assailants, as the bad actors, which is exactly what they did following the attack. But for those of us who were there and for those of us who documented what happened, we are able to prove exactly who enacted violence on whom in Hind's Hall.
Right. We did a whole video actually here at the Katie Halper Show. It was a mashup of the media describing the violence committed by pro-Palestine people. And we just showed them saying that, and then showed the actual violence committed, of course, by the Israel defenders and the racist rhetoric and offensive rhetoric. And of course, it actually comes from the Israel defenders, who have like a weird fetish with wishing rape on people and, you know, using the N-word and spitting at people and attacking them. And at the best, you would think from the media coverage, at like the fairest media coverage outside of, you know, independent media, makes it seem like both sides were doing it. But most of the media makes it seem like it was really just one side. And of course, it was just one side, but it was the opposite side of what they're saying. There's an image that we have of you with your well, there's that one. So what is that from?
Yeah, that is from the bruising when they dragged me away. They kept telling me that I wasn't allowed to speak. And so every time I was yelling as they walked me down the street, they would grab my arm and drag me further away from the students that were trying to document.
Not legal, right, counselor?
It's true.
Okay. I should have gone to law school. And let's take a look at the other injury that you documented.
Yeah, that was from when I was thrown into the stairs. And actually, when we were on the NYPD bus, we were first loaded onto a bus and my leg was bleeding and everyone was demanding that they give me medical attention. And they refused. So everyone stood up and started chanting. They refused again. And I had to request 5 times before I ended up lifting my leg in the air and waving my bloody leg in front of one of the officers' body cams that was live and saying, "This is documented. Are you still denying me medical attention?" And that's when they finally unloaded me off the bus and then made me walk 6 blocks to get to the ambulance. But I used those 6 blocks to yell at all the students that were documenting from their windows. Because even in the 6-block radius surrounding Hind's Hall, as Brandon was mentioning, and James as well, they had forced every resident, student and non-student alike, inside their buildings. Again, an effort to suppress any sort of coverage or any sort of solidarity with those of us who were being arrested. And that still failed. And I think that to me is one of the most important lessons that people can take out of this. It's not that we got brutalized by the police. We are not the first. Sadly, we will not be the last, but it is about how the community comes together and what we continue to do to resist after such brutality. And I think that's a really important part of this lawsuit to me, is that we will not just accept that Columbia, the NYPD, these billionaire donors are allowed to spin a false narrative, target us, deprive us of our most basic rights to housing, healthcare, and education, and get away with it. That we will speak out publicly, even when doing so comes at a great cost to ourselves and our own personal lives and loved ones. And we won't only speak out, we will continue to organize. That nothing about repression will lead to anything other than greater resistance.
Well, speaking of repression, let's take a look at how this was represented by ABC.
Columbia University's Hamilton Hall as cops reclaim the building from occupying protesters. And not wasting any time today, cops in riot gear moved in to clear an encampment at Fordham's Lincoln Center campus. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan and Sonia Rincon covering all angles tonight. We begin with Jim Dolan and that new video from Columbia. Jim?
Police trying to retake control of Hamilton Hall on the campus of Columbia University last night. There were traps at every turn.
Let's deploy a flashback.
And they deployed plenty of them. They used...
Can I just ask, when those got thrown in there, where were the people that were inside the building? Because from what I could hear on the coverage, they couldn't see past the barricade and they just blindly threw those in there.
They actually say in one of the pieces of body cam that they did release, and Brandon's point is well taken, that they release a very specific segment, which is before they start brutally attacking us even further, but they say that protesters are bracing against the barricades. They knew we were right inside and they shot at us anyway. And one of those flash grenades burned a student. Flash grenades are not permissible protest suppression.
No.
Even under NYPD regulations, that was the first time, as far as I'm aware, that flash grenades have been utilized against protesters in New York City.
It is super important that they are not detonated in close proximity to people, because they not only for the burning that you just mentioned, but they also detonate with something like 170 decibels, which is more than enough to completely blow out your eardrums.
Yeah, if I can step in on that point, like the purpose of them using these flash grenades is to completely disorient people.
Right.
And the sound it's like actually deafening. It can make somebody's like ears ringing for just like 10 minutes, afterwards. Right. And again, these are literal tactics of like actual warfare, It's not a metaphor.
And I think their narrative too, I mean, I noted the word in there of retaking and reclaiming the building. Retaking and reclaiming it from whom? For whom? Who does that building belong to if not the students and the community? Right. Columbia claims all across their website that they exist to benefit not just Harlem, but the greater New York City community. Yet campus has been locked down for almost a year straight now. They treated our community members as if they were some hardened outside criminals instead of conscientious people who were standing up against a genocide. I mean, there was a nonviolent way for this all to end. Columbia could have stopped funding the murder of our loved ones. They chose not to. They chose to attack us and brutalize us instead.
They're like, okay, we could either listen to these peaceful protesters and stop actively facilitating genocide, or we can blindly throw these incendiary devices into a room full of unarmed people. And they chose the latter.
It's a metaphor for American politics. To the point about how this affects the community, again, to bring it to 68, the reason that there was so much tension, like right after MLK was assassinated, Harlem is a tinderbox, all these various different militant civil rights groups, ready to throw down, because the police, they're not just in Columbia, they're in all the surrounding streets, in the surrounding community in Harlem. So everybody feels the effect of this in the same way that, the Black community in Harlem has always had to feel the effect of police violence, whether it has to do with them or not. It's the same thing, and right. So this whole heightened military state that Columbia has been, like Catherine's saying, for the past year, that affects the community, and again, this is what's not being talked about in the media.
Sauce to cut through chains protesters had used to keep them out. Battering.
And of course, they don't say students or community members, they say protesters, And of course, a lot of the discourse was about outside agitators.
Battering rams to break into rooms that were locked, one room at a time. Police took control, and in all that madness, safely arrested the pro-Palestine demonstrators who had seized the building the day before.
Catherine, when I was asking about these clips, you pointed out that clip shows like the guy afterwards covering you, but you don't see the person that's you getting thrown. So that was an interesting editorial choice.
It wasn't just one person who they stomped in the face. They stomped numerous people in the face, leading to hospitalizations and concussions and the broken eye socket. They also knelt on our back. There will be body cam footage someday if the NYPD ever does their job and releases it, of them kneeling on our backs as I and other people are saying that we can't breathe and that we're in pain, and they continue to do so, even though that tactic was outlawed following the George Floyd uprisings. There is so much body cam footage that has not yet been released that will be absolutely damning for the NYPD, for Eric Adams, and for the Columbia administration.
You notice the tone of voice this narrator is
hilarious.
Using?
It's really funny.
Like the inflections that he's using are, there's a message, an implication there, I feel like, that it bolsters the, these dangerous thugs are just, blah, blah, blah. Like he's not just objectively narrating what's going on or something like that.
Like old school propaganda.
Yeah.
Like Dragnet.
Yeah, he's really enjoying the cops first robbers of it all, but there's no Orwellian aspect to it, right? Because he's talking about these dangerous criminals and everyone's sitting on the floor holding hands, protecting each other. And then he's talking about they retook control, and you see, they're not making it clear, but all those images of those smashing windows and stuff, that's the cops doing that. That's the cops cutting open doors and so forth. And there's, at some point they had tried to blame the occupiers for destroying a whole other wing of this building that they didn't have access to. And this is something I'm really hoping to get out of this litigation is, the body cam footage. No one was ever in that from the protester side. That was the police trying to find a way into the building and then just breaking things on the way through because it seemed fun and maybe they could blame the protesters for it later. So yeah, this idea of like what is control, what is order, and what is chaos and disorder is just completely inverted here.
Also, when they say safely, like it's not safe if you stomp on people, you like break someone's eye socket, you throw people on stairs. Like, yeah, no one died, but I don't think anyone would describe this as a safe like de-escalation. Let's go back though. We're going to hear from some more really insightful people.
They tried to lock us out, but the NYPD and the people of the city of New York will never be locked out, and we will always work together to keep our city safe.
He makes me ashamed to have a slight New York accent. That's really bad PR for us. Okay.
About 300 people were arrested at Columbia and CUNY combined, and the mayor says not all of them are students.
There are people that we have been watching in organizations that are not part of the campus. We've been very clear. There are individuals and organizations that are not students. We're seeing a shift in tactics.
No one was injured in the NYPD's action.
The efforts by the NYPD were thorough, professional, and they exercised a degree of calm in a very tense situation that should be commended.
Still, some criticized it anyway.
They escalated at every single point of the way, intending for this to be the result.
They are attempting to disrupt our city, and we are not going to permit it to happen.
This is the New York City Police Department.
Today, a much smaller encampment at Fordham's Upper West Side campus was cleared as well by the NYPD, and a handful of protesters there were arrested without incident. The students arrested at the various campuses across New York City will be arraigned here at 100 Center Street. That's the same building former President Donald Trump is on trial right now.
Oh, you guys are just like Trump. Okay.
The charges for the students range from trespassing to criminal mischief.
One other thing that I did want to point out about how it was covered is that there was like police body cam footage that was released later. I don't know if it was leaked or how it got out or what. And this like sanitized, like ridiculous story you get from CNN and all these other places, like you can see what happened. Like they used a buzzsaw to hack through the barricades and everything, shot a live bullet, a bunch of flash grenades, and just absolutely brutalized a bunch of defenseless, like young people. The stories that were coming out, Eric Adams saying like, oh, like no violence was used. Like it's almost like laughable what the reality of the situation was. And also like in jail, seeing again from the other people around the city, like there was somebody in there who was an unhoused person who was living in a shelter, who had nothing to do with anything, who was just walking around and got arrested and like groped and basically sexually assaulted by the police. Like it was horrible, like this is stuff that people don't know about,
So this person was just rounded up?
Yeah, in jail. They don't care. They don't give a difference, They're just anybody who gets in the way. That's why they put journalists in a separate room,
Yeah, and I think, it just really bears stressing, as if it's not obvious, between the gunfire, the flashbangs, the jaws of life, and the heavy-duty saws, and just the ruthless beating. People were really badly hurt. It's a miracle that no one was killed. And that is, something that Columbia is absolutely culpable for. When you send in this, riot police that looks more like, Navy SEAL battalion or something like that, you're really rolling the dice on someone getting killed. And that was a chance that Columbia knowingly took.